conventions, whatever, I will do my best to answer them as thoroughly as possible. So, anybody? Cues? There's a cue.
What studios did you mostly work for?
I've pretty much just worked as far as anime goes with companies that are based in Texas. That's where I live, is in Texas. And so I did quite a lot of work with ADV Films, and the studio is now Seraphim Studios, so they're releasing titles through Sentai Filmworks like Blue Drop and Tears to Tierra. And I've also worked on quite a lot of shows with Funimation as well. So but it's pretty much all been in the Texas area. So shows that I've worked on have been like Evangelion, Noir, Excel Saga, Full Metal Alchemist. There's a lot of them. There's many of them. But anyway, all in Texas. Yes.
Why don't you compare and contrast the industry currently and when you started 17 years ago?
Well, it's interesting because right now it's a lot more like it was 17 years ago, because it kind of went from here and then it went like way up here and then went whoosh, like that. So we're actually not quite back down to that original 1994 level, but it's kind of gone back down to more like a 96, 97 kind of level. I mean, just to give you an example, a few years ago in Japan, on an average year, they would produce about 90 anime series in a year, and now the number is 30. So there's a lot less stuff for us to work on. The industry has contracted considerably, and at this moment, it's my understanding there is little, if any, recording actually going on due to the earthquake. A friend of mine who is a voice actor in Japan said that a job that she had was canceled because many of the studios are underground and they are just not sure if they're structurally okay until all the inspections are done and so forth for them to be able to proceed with that. But a lot of shows have halted production right now. So I mean, hopefully they're going to be able to continue that in the future, but it's just the industry is much smaller. Of course, fandom and awareness of anime in the West has increased tremendously. When I worked on the first show, which was Guy Double Target, if anybody is interested, it's hentai. It was a job. I was young. I needed the money. 1994, when that show came out on VHS, of course, because that's what we had. I went into a Suncoast. I was working in a mall, and there was a Suncoast. May it rest in peace. There was a Suncoast in the mall, and I went in there, and there was a shelf. Actually, not even a whole shelf. It was like half a shelf, maybe about this much space. And at the end of the shelf, there was a little sign that said Japanimation. And there were about 10, maybe, videotapes on the shelf. And of those 10 videotapes, it was maybe about 4 different titles, actually, on the shelf. And one of them was the show that I worked on. So I told the people working in Suncoast, I worked on this movie. I was so excited. I wanted to tell everybody about this porn that I had done. It was thrilling, really. Anyway, so that was that. Of course, now we know that many of the anime sections have decreased in places like Best Buy or wherever they're still carrying anime, because they were a few years ago like this whole giant aisle of anime, and then it kind of shrunk back down, but still it's more than 4 titles. So it grew and it expanded and contracted. I don't know. Thermal expansion. Little Ava reference for you there. Yes.
When you first got done doing the voice acting for the anime, did you go, oh, this may be something interesting, or were you working on something else and you go, we want you to come in and do this?
I really had, my background is theater, and I'd always had some interest kind of in the back of my mind in just voice acting in general for anything. And I hadn't really pursued it yet, or didn't really know how to. It didn't, I don't know, it just never occurred to me how I would do that or anything. So when I got that phone call and when I got the opportunity to go and audition, I was very excited about it. I thought, well, oh wow, that's just the kind of thing I've been thinking about. Of course, it was porn, but whatever. I was super excited about it, and I didn't really have any inkling what the growth of the industry would be. I remember at the time, the director of the show, Matt Greenfield, who's one of the co-founders of ADV, told me, like, it's our hope that we will someday be able to dub a show every month. And I thought, wow, one every month, that'd be amazing. Of course, really it was mostly OVAs at that time. That's what we were doing, was really OVAs. Yeah, well, it really just grew exponentially from there. But I had certainly no idea how much it was going to expand, and I didn't really know how much of a career that would be. I mean, I was pursuing an acting career, so I still do, all kinds of different jobs, commercials, and some film work. No, I mean, I was excited about doing it, but I had no idea what that was going to turn into. I think that might have been. Did that mostly answer your question? I was rambling a lot. I'm sorry. Yes. Oh, question, yes.
What was it like reprising the role of Oscar
That is an excellent question about, I don't know if you've heard that or not, but about reprising the role of Asuka in the new Ava movie, which is screening here tomorrow at 4:30, by the way, in one of these rooms. Don't know which one. Which I will be introducing with Mitsuishi-san, and I'm so super excited about meeting. I'm going to answer the question really, but I'm so super excited about meeting Kotono Mitsuishi because we both played the role of Komei Sawaguchi in Blue Seed, and it was the first TV series that I ever worked on. Super excited. Anyway, so Ava 2.22. That was fun. I have to say, going back to Asuka, in a way, to me, it feels like Asuka hasn't ever left me. It's not like a character where sometimes you're working on a show and you go back into the studio a few months later, oh, you need to play me a reference. What's that character like or something? Asuka is always just right beneath the surface with me. I don't have to think about it or go looking for her, as it were. She's just right there. So it was kind of like an old friend in a way, or I've said before, like slipping on a pair of comfortable slippers, She was just right there with me all the time, I felt. And honestly, it had been, the last thing I recorded as Asuka was around 2002 or something like that, whenever we did the director's cut episodes for the Platinum Edition, whenever those came out. So it had been about 8 years. We recorded the movie last year. So it had been about really 8 years, but to me, it didn't seem like 8 years, because I just feel like Asuka's always there. Plus, I go to conventions all the time. People are always, they always want a little Asuka something, and yeah, so she's always with me, and I love it. Yes.
Did you know immediately that you would be reprising the role when you found out about the
I'm good friends with the director, so that was with Funimation, and I've been working with them on many shows for years. So I pretty much knew. I wasn't allowed to really say anything about it for a long time because they did want to make an announcement, and that's very common with studios for them to wait to make certain cast announcements. But I'm also, if this is related or not, who knows, but I'm very good friends with Yuko Miyamura, who is the original voice of Asuka. So I've been corresponding with her about, I was actually with her when she got the message that they needed to schedule her to come in and work on the movie. So that was kind of cool that I was with her when she got that message. And then she emailed me after she did it and said how much she enjoyed doing it and how much she likes this new Asuka Shikinami. But for her, it's really different because in Japan, they've had all these Ava video games, and she does voices for, pachinko machines, and she's done so many different versions of different Asukas, So for her, literally, she's never left Asuka. But for me, it was a long time. It just didn't feel like it. Yeah.
2 questions since we're on the subject of Ava. First one is Section 23 or
Whenever too many names for me to keep track of, I call it the place.
Are they still interested
I would imagine they are. I mean, I can't speak on behalf of them because I've never been actually an employee of any anime company. I'm an independent contractor, so I get hired to work as a writer or an actor, and I just do that one job as a contract employee, and then I'm unemployed. So I don't actually work like at those studios. I don't have a little desk that I go to or anything like that. I mean, I think they did want to get it the first time. The problem is a difference in perception of how Ava is perceived in Japan versus how it's perceived in the West. In Japan, Ava is completely pervasive throughout society. Like I said, it's the video games. There's a pachinko parlor in Akihabara that is only Evangelion games. Only Ava. So it's everywhere in the society. Like when these last 2 Ava movies opened, they were some of the highest grossing movies of the year. They don't play in American movie theaters. I mean, they might play like in select locations for one night and so forth, but it's not in a wide release. It didn't play on American television until 2006, I think it was, when it was on Adult Swim. So it's just, there's not the same awareness. That means in Japan, they have a different idea of what that value is. So what the amount of money that they want for the American distribution rights or Western distribution rights is really out of sync with what it's actually worth, if that kind of makes sense. And the example that Matt Greenfield always gives, and he was the producer and director on the English TV series, they offered an amount of money that was the most that they felt that they could possibly offer for End of Evangelion and Death and Rebirth. They said, okay, this is the most amount of money we can possibly offer you to where we still think we could make any money back at all on these movies. And Gainax turned that money down. So the money that they offered that was turned down by Gainax, they used that money instead to buy 10 television series. I don't really know what the number is, but that gives you a pretty good idea. It was a lot of money, so. I don't know. Yeah, I really don't know what the amount is, and if I did know, I couldn't say, but he's said that figure at a lot of anime conventions. So, and I think it was, a similar thing. Of course, they would have loved to have gotten the rebuild movies, but again, it's a difference of they think, oh, it made so many millions of dollars in Japan, and everybody in Japan knows what it is. It's popular in America. We can get blobbity, blobbity, blobbity $1 million for it. Well, no, you really can't. So, whatever, Funimation somehow came up with something to meet whatever their demands were, and they've gotten the first 2 movies, but it's my understanding, each of these movies is independent. So do not take it for granted that because Funimation has released these first 2 movies, that whenever the 3rd one comes out, at some point in the future, that we don't know. Don't take it for granted that it'll be Funimation. Might be Seraphim, might be Sony, who knows? No way to know. I mean, they're not doing it in Japan yet, so it doesn't even exist as something to be licensed. Yes?
Second question.
Oh, yes, sorry.
What's the status of the TV series? Are we trying to reacquire that?
I have no idea, because like I said, I mean, I personally can't acquire anything. I've got like less than $30 in my wallet right now. So, that probably wouldn't get me anything. So I really have no idea. Yeah.
If I recall correctly, during that brief period when ADV had Gurren Lagann,
Yeah.
you were going to play Yoko, right?
I did play Yoko. Not was going to, did. The
How
first
much
5
did you
episodes
do?
were completely produced. I mean, the DVDs were printed. It was done. We did the first 5 episodes. The first 2 episodes of it actually screened at OhioCon in 2007, 8. I get so confused now. 8. I guess it must have been January of 2008. The first, and then the floor fell out from under everyone, and I didn't do it. I mean, I did it, but who cares? It was sad. Although, to be honest with you, I see how much Yoko merchandise there is. I'm pointing at the Yoko in the first row. There's so much Yoko merchandise. I mean, I would literally be bankrupt by now. And every time I look at all the Yoko merchandise, I think, oh, it's probably just as well I did not do that. Because I already spend so much of my money buying Oscar merchandise.
Do you still have all of that?
Hmm?
Do you still have all of your Oscar merchandise?
What would I do with it? I mean, like, just put it out at the curbside on recycling day when they have the recycle your action figures bin, you know. Yeah, I'm not selling my Oscar stuff. I keep adding to it. Just bought more last week. Lena Inverse, yes.
What is the most embarrassing thing that's happened to you while recording?
Most embarrassing thing while recording.
Probably the hentai.
What's funny is I've just really realized recently regarding that guy double target, there are scenes in that are rather graphic, but that my character wasn't in, so I never saw them. And when it was released, they released two different versions of it. They released an edited and an unedited version of it. And I've only ever seen the edited version. Well, I'm actually doing a convention with Matt, who was the director, and I'm married to him now. But anyway, we're doing a convention together in a couple months where they're going to screen it. So I'm going to see it for the first time. I don't even think I'm going to watch it beforehand. I'll just be all surprised, like, oh! We're going to do commentary on it. But I don't know. I mean, I was so excited at that time. I was young. I was wide-eyed. I was thrilled. I was getting paid. It was my first paid acting job. That I couldn't even be embarrassed by it. I didn't care. I didn't care what it was. It was exciting and fun and new. Gosh, it's hard to say. I mean, not really anything that's super, super embarrassing. There's a few little weird things, like a few years back, I was working on the second season of Those Who Hunt Elves. And there are these adorable little tiny bears. And they poop rolls of toilet paper. It's very mysterious to me because what they do afterwards, I don't know. Makes you wonder. And also the rolls of toilet paper are just about as big as the bears themselves. I'm calling them bears because they look like bears, but really they're like you could hold in your hand. And they just go, meow, meow. I know because I was the person doing the voice. So, anyway, the point being that there was a scene where the bear is producing a roll of toilet paper, right? So, you know, I had to do the little, like, you know, producing the roll of toilet paper. And I remember at the time thinking, like, wow, at the time, probably been voice acting about 10 years, and I'm thinking, wow, my 10-year career, this is surely the pinnacle. I'm making poop sounds as a little tiny bear. So it's moderately embarrassing, but I'm not easily embarrassed. To me, I think the most embarrassing thing was when we were recording, it was a live action show, Gamera, Guardian of the Universe, Giant Turtle, you know. And we were working on that, and in the middle of the session, a small group of some Japanese guests came into the outer part of the studio. And so we stopped recording, and I was introduced to the guests. And I was told that they had produced or released a show called Power Dolls. And I was one of the voices of one of the main characters on the English release of Power Dolls. And so when I was introduced to them, the person doing the introduction, Matt, of course, he tells them that I played Sergeant Fawn. And then they all started laughing. And so it was kind of embarrassing because I thought, why are they laughing? Did they hear it? They didn't like it? Is it because I'm really tiny and I did the voice of this like super macho badass chick? I don't know. So that was kind of embarrassing. Like I'm meeting them and I don't speak any Japanese and they say blah 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 Sergeant Fun des and they go oh. All right, I don't know what that was, but I'm gonna leave now. So yeah, that was moderately embarrassing. Yes. Yes.
So I'm going to ask the direct questions here. What is the production cycle for a voice actor? I mean, do you get the script first, or do you just walk into the studio?
You've never seen it before. And that's pretty much true of like in general for anime particularly. Yeah, a lot of times, and I can tell you, working as a writer doing these script adaptations. A lot of times that script might not be finished until the day before or even the day that actor is going to be working on it. There's not really any advantage to the actor seeing the script in advance for an anime. you're gonna watch it. It's right there in front of you. Here's the script. There's the video. Usually now it's all on. A lot of times it'll be on one screen, like one giant split screen. The video and the script is right there. Hardly anybody even uses paper scripts anymore. So it's all right there for you. And a lot of times things change. You record the line, it's too long, it's too short. If people get too, set about really thinking about, oh, I'm gonna deliver this line just like such and such, you don't want to get too caught up in how you're gonna do it. It's very spontaneous. So there really isn't. Years ago, I used to be super into, like, if there was a script available in advance, like watching it the day before, I used to be way into that. But I've stopped doing that a long time ago, and I really appreciate there's a really unique quality about anime in your ability to be truly spontaneous with it. If you're working on something like a play or film, you've read the whole script in advance, so you know everything about the story, you know how it ends, you know what's going to happen to your character, the other characters. You have to memorize the dialogue. If it's a play, obviously you've rehearsed it many times. All of these things are very important for those kind of media. But for voice acting, what is so cool is that as your character, as you're experiencing these events, you can watch it for the very first time and really play it out in a genuinely fresh way that doesn't have to be contrived. There's a term in acting that's called playing the end of the scene, and so it's something that as an actor you always have to be aware of. Just because you know that your son is about to be hit by a truck in the next scene, you can't play this scene with that knowledge in your mind because the character doesn't know that. So it's something that an actor always has to work against, because you really, as the person, you know what's going to happen, but the character doesn't. So you cannot play the end of the scene. With anime, it's great because you don't know what's going to happen. And so you genuinely get to experience those things as the character does. And I really love that aspect of it. And as far as any background that maybe you need to know for that character, the director should be able to supply that information to you, as in like what built up to this moment, where that character is from, what the person's background is, what's going on in the scene. The director will be able to supply all that other information for you, but it's really not necessary to have the script in advance. And then when you're in the studio, there's the actor in the recording booth, and then on the outside of the booth, you've got the sound engineer and director, and that's pretty much it. And there can possibly be more people, like possibly a producer or a writer, but well over 90% of the sessions I've had have been just those three people, me and the two people on the other side of the glass. That's it. That's all the people.
So like the scene between Asuka and Shinji, you would record all the Asuka lines, and then would somebody else read the Shinji lines, or would you actually have the voice?
No, the script is right there in front of you, so you know what the other person is saying. Now, if the other person in your scene, that is adorable. I'm appreciating the Shinji dressed as Asuka. Yes, that's very good from episode 8. No, so if the other actor has already recorded, then you'll hear their dialogue, so you can hear that. If they haven't, you're hearing it in Japanese and you're reading the script, so you know what the other person is saying. And it's up to the director to put all that together. This is very much a director's medium, more so than any other form of acting at all, because the director is the one who has to know what all those parts are going to sound like when they're put together. And in the case specifically of myself and Spike Spencer, who played Shinji, the first time I met him, we had already recorded probably half of the series. So I never even met him. Not only did we not record together, we never even met. So that's the sign of a good director, that you sound like you're having a conversation or maybe an argument with someone that you've never even met. And I've done shows with so many actors that I've never met at all. So I try to avoid saying working with because it's really quite a bit of a misnomer. People think of working with as in like a job that they're familiar with, or maybe they go to a place with other people that they interact with on a daily basis. And to me, I think of the people that I work with is like the director and the sound engineer, because I really don't work with the other actors. There have been a couple of shows where we've had a setup where you've had individual recording booths where you're isolated and then you're recording at the same time with those actors. And I have to tell you, it is a lot of fun. It's really awesome, but we don't get to do it very much. Yeah, yeah.
And all the Oscar merchandise you own, do you have a particular favorite item?
Ooh, a favorite Oscar item. Oh. Man, it's just, it's so hard. I don't know. I really, it's really hard for me to think of one. I'm so sorry that I can't think of one. I've got so much stuff. I mean, I love it all. I love it all tremendously. I don't know. I can't think of one right now. I'm sorry. Over there. Yeah.
So do you collect merchandise from all the shows you've done?
Yes, I do. There's just not as much of it. Yes, anytime I see something with the character that I've done from whatever show, I was very excited a couple years ago to find my character from One Piece had figures. Woo! Don't you go? That was awesome. So yes, all of them. Yeah.
I don't know if this is did you audition for the role of Oscar?
That is an awesome question. I did not audition for the role of Asuka. And the interesting thing about that is I wasn't even aware when the auditions were going on for Ava. Now, my character didn't come in until the 8th episode. At that time, they were recording 2 episodes at a time because that's what came out on a VHS tape. So they would record episodes 1 and 2. Then a few weeks later, episodes 3 and 4. Episodes 5 and 6. So, it was a ways down. At some point, I became aware that there was this show in production, and there was kind of a lot of buzz about it. Although you have to remember, we were recording this while it was airing on TV in Japan. So it was brand new. It wasn't some uber international sensation. It was just a cool show. What I found out is that there had been auditions for pretty much all of the major roles in the show, that many people had auditioned for various characters, but everyone who was familiar with the show, who was working at ADV, kept coming into Matt's office, who was the director, and saying, "So, Tiffany's going to be playing Oscar, right?" I was completely unaware that this was happening. Yes, so I actually did not audition to play Oscar. I was just sort of born to play Oscar, I guess. By that point, by the time I first recorded Oscar, I'd done quite a few shows at that point. It wasn't like my very first show. So, a lot of people were familiar enough with my work, including the director. And then when they realized also that I spoke German, they just figured this was sort of a meant-to-be thing. And I actually did. I often forget to say that because I didn't even realize about all these other people auditioning for the different parts until many years later. And I have to say, it's not terribly unusual to be cast without auditioning. I mean, most of the time for things I do audition, but there are things that I get called up, hey, they want to book you for such and such, just based on, you've done these many other hundreds of roles, so they figure that you might be able to do this, But thank you for asking that, because I usually forget. Yes?
Has Oscar been your favorite role of you, or?
That is really hard to say. I do get that question a lot. Oscar's very special for many, many reasons, for sure. It's hard to say really whether she is my favorite. I mean, I've just enjoyed being able to do so many different kinds of really awesome characters, and some things that are just silly and fun, some things that are really dark and deep and dramatic, Oscar kind of had all of those things. My favorite thing about doing this kind of work is the opportunity to play a lot of different kinds of characters, a lot of different things that I would never be able to play probably for live action or on stage. I mean, playing, you know, little critters, and I played a tree one time. I was the spirit of a tank that was possessed by cats. So I've done, you know, pooping bears. So all of these kind of things. I love doing the critters. Love doing the critters so much. It's so much fun. Love doing the critters. But I mean, Asuka is fantastic. For sure. Yes? It just depends on what the character is. You know, I mean, it's all about creating a character and, you know, seeing in